The very first character I ever played in Diablo 2 was a Necromancer, and as much as he is seen as more of a support character, especially when you're partying up online, he can deal a lot of damage, and is arguably one of the best pits farming characters, of which the build the argument is based upon will be what we are discussing today. In today's video, I'm going to go over the build for the Endgame Magic Finding Poison Nova Necromancer. I'm going to go over the attributes, the skill tree, the gear for my character and my mercenary, and afterwards I'm going to show you guys some gameplay so you could see this build in action. But do keep in mind that when it comes to this build, there are different ways you can be able to gear the character depending on your needs, whether you're trying to go for maximum DPS, you're trying to do a magic find character, or a hybrid of the two. Just keep in mind when it comes to looking at the gear choices that I'm going to be choosing, that you can choose alternative gear depending on the demand that you have for your build. Before we actually get into the build, the comment shout out for this video is going to be Ryan Cooper from my build guide video going over the Endgame Magic Finding Summoning Druid, telling me about his alternative build to the one that I showed in the video where he uses Fury instead to be able to lead his summons like a wolf pack, as well as discussing one of the drawbacks to the actual build itself with the fact that the summons have to be constantly resummoned game after game. And now after playing this build, I couldn't agree more. Now let's go ahead and get into the video. For the attributes, this is a max vitality setup, meaning we have just enough points into strength to be able to equip the gear, and the rest is put into vitality, nothing into energy. Moving on to the skill trees, for the summoning skill tree, we have 1 point into Raise Skeleton Mage, and Revives for all the skills on the right. Using Revives is great for having something between you and the enemies to take damage for you, and depending on where you're farming, the ones you raise at the beginning of your run may be the only ones that you need until your next run. Then 1 point into Clay Golem, Blood Golem, and Iron Golem, as we will use him with Insight to free up what our mercenary could then use for his weapon. Then 1 point into Skeleton Mastery, 1 point into Summon Resist, and then maxed out Golem Mastery, as points into the Mastery does more overall for the skill, comparatively speaking to putting additional points into Iron Golem. His survivability is important for our mana regeneration to not have to use mana potions, especially for telestomping around and using Poison Nova. Now to the Curses skill tree, we have 1 point into all the prerequisites to unlock Lower Resist. We'll come back to this skill tree in a moment once we cover the Poison and Bone skill tree, because we're going to go over 2 options where you can put your remaining skill points into and why. Lastly, for the Poison and Bone skill tree, we have 1 point into Bone Armor for a bit of added protection, and then 1 point into Bone Wall because the goal with the AoE, or Area of Effect, with the Poison Nova skill is to kill as much within the radius as possible as you can cast the skill, thus increasing your clear speed. Having 1 point into Bone Wall can help aggro over enemies off-screen closer to you, and make the killing of everything around you a little bit faster. It's not a requirement, but can be helpful especially in quite large areas to bring enemies closer to you for very little extra work. Moving on, 1 point into Teeth, Corpse Explosion, and maxed out Poison Dagger, Poison Explosion, and Poison Nova, as this is going to be our main skill to be able to deal damage before we explode everything with Corpse Explosion. Here's where the argument can be made for putting the remaining points into either Corpse Explosion or Lower Resist. You get the full benefit of the max effectiveness with the damage with the first point you put into Corpse Explosion, meaning any additional points into it doesn't increase the damage. And with Lower Resistance, the more points you add into it, the lower the resistances will go. Adding points into either skill will also help increase the radius of the skill's effectiveness, but with Lower Resistance, you will benefit more with the damage of your Poison Nova being more effective. So you can try to 50-50 and put points into both to be able to have a good radius for each skill. Or you can choose more Lower Resist AoE and not have to cast it everywhere and lower more resistances. That, or you can choose more Corpse Explosion AoE and not have to spam it when exploding the entire room. It's a personal preference, but I went with Lower Resist as I want the damage from Poison Nova to be more effective with more enemies' resistances lowered and fewer clicks to be able to do it. For the gear, starting from the top, because this is a Magic Find build, I'm using my Shaco socketed with a perfect Topaz for increased Magic Find, plus to skills, and boost to life and mana. And lastly, the damage reduction. The amulet is a perfect Mars for the plus to skills, and boost to attributes and resistances. If you're wanting higher FCR breakpoints, a nice crafted amulet could be the best in slot choice, hopefully having additional good stats to be able to help out your build. The body armor is Enigma to be able to teleport around, as well as it has a big boost to strength, Magic Find, faster run walk, and everything else that makes his body armor OP. The weapon is Heart of the Oak for the plus to skills, FCR, resistances, and the increased maximum mana. Despite only being 10%, can actually be really helpful. The best choice would be a Death's Web for the plus to skills and the big lowering of the enemy's poison resistance. However, that item still eludes me to this day. The shield is a Spirit Shield for the plus to skills, faster cast rate, faster hit recovery, large boost to mana, and help with resistances. The boots are War Travelers for the Magic Find. The first ring is an FCR ring with Fire Res. The belt is Arachnid's Mesh for the plus to skills, FCR, and again, the small increase in mana does end up helping with our mana pool not ever needing to be refilled using mana potions. The second ring is a Stone of Jordan for the plus to skills and the increase to maximum mana. The gloves are Tranquil's gloves for the FCR, plus to curses, but also for the boost to our poison damage, which is both very helpful and needed for this poison focused build. However, if you don't have a pair of Triangle's gloves, using Mage Fist is a great alternative because the plus to fire skills actually does work with adding points into Corpse Explosion, as the skill does both half physical damage and half fire damage. On Switch, I'm using the standard CTA and Spirit combo to be able to boost our health up, increasing our survivability. If your focus is for poison resistance reduction onto enemies, you could switch certain items to be able to use 3 pieces of the Triangul set, such as the shield, gloves, and belt combo, as the bonus from using 3 pieces of the set will help with reducing an enemy's poison resistance, or you can run the full set. In the inventory, I have my queue for when I find anything worth checking out, both tomes, my torch, Annie, the grand charms are all poison and bone skillers, with the one on the end being a Geeds, and the small charms are 7% magic find small charms to be able to help increase our magic find that much more, with the last one being a plain faster hit recovery small charm. Looking over the additional stats, this Necromancer has nearly 300% magic find, 60% faster hit recovery to be able to get to the 56% breakpoint, and 125% faster cast rate, which is an exact breakpoint, helping us to spam all of our skills that much faster. For the Mercenary, his gear doesn't have to be as endgame focused with this build. You could use a Tal's Mask for the res and life leech, Treachery for the IAS boost and Fade proc, and the Obedience Rune Word for dealing a lot of damage, but I went with using an endgame setup. He's using Andariel's Visage that is socketed with a Fire Res Jewel. This helm is for the life leech, the IAS boost, as well as his own Poison Nova proc. The body armor is Fortitude for the resistances, enhanced damage, and all the other useful stats on this rune word. And the weapon is Infinity, not for the poison damage, as Conviction doesn't actually help with poison. But since we are using Corpse Explosion, and as I mentioned when talking about Mage Fist, the half fire damage on Corpse Explosion will be boosted with Conviction. Granted, it is nothing to write home about, but using this will help with clear speed, so I wouldn't have to consider using any other items in its place, such as using the 3-piece Triangul set for the additional poison damage reduction to speed up the clear speed. Infinity will help in the latter with clear speed, and it also has great damage on it, making this still a solid choice for this build regardless. Now that we've discussed the attributes, the skill trees, the gear for my character and my mercenary, let's go ahead and check out this build in action to see how well it actually plays out. I'm starting with cows to hopefully give a better look as to how the order for casting and skills will go with how dense the Mumu farm is. The order is lower resist, Poison Nova, and you'll see me over spamming it a lot, then amplify damage, then wait for corpses, and you'll be able to start exploding everything very quickly. Anything not exploded is great to revive for more meat shields. You can revive skeletons if you want a more full army, but revives alone do the job well. This one was risky with my health ending up so low, but I wanted to group up the cows as much as possible to be able to show how powerful using the skills together can be, clearing the entire screen with no effort at all. You can do a chain effect with the explosions to go from one side of the screen to the other, or go in a circle, but this helps to maximize your clear speed with having the explosion radius go far enough to keep killing enemies without extra effort. In the pits, for most of the monsters inside, you don't even need to use amplified damage and corpse explosion, at least in level 1, because the poison damage being done alone kills them, with maybe the shamans needing a little bit more to be able to kill them. But for large groups, the same skill order casting clears everything very quickly. Teleport down to the middle, and using all 4 skills, watch the entire room explode, and another look at chaining the corpse explosions to be able to clear the entire room. Now let's make things interesting. On player 7, it does take a bit more time to get the first few corpses to drop, of which I wait for 2 to 3 because 1 might not be enough to start dropping anything, especially if you casted Poison Nova and the damage really didn't sink in enough for the corpse explosion to be as effective, even with amplified damage. Other than that, this build is very powerful and overall very fun. It's a good mix of support and damage as your mercenary and summons need to get the initial kills, then you come in and annihilate everything in sight. For those of you wanting to try this build but don't have the time to be able to farm for endgame gear, but would like to try this build out on a budget, make sure to check out my video going over this build with very budget gear that still clears areas such as cows in the pits very well, losing only the expensive gear, but none of the fun. And that's going to wrap it up for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it and were able to see if this build would be something that you would be interested in going into the future, and if anything, at least just enjoyed the video. If you like this kind of content and want to see more, hit the subscribe button and hit the bell notification to be notified whenever a new video comes out.
Come on. Come on. Come on, then. There you are. There you are.
And if you like this video, please let me know by leaving a like. It really is appreciated to be able to help my channel to grow. And if you want to see more of my Diablo 2 Resurrected content, make sure to click the card in the corner up above to check out my Diablo 2 Resurrected playlist. There's a lot of videos already in it with a lot more coming in the very near future. Other than that, I hope you guys are staying safe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care.